Welcome to the Contrarians, and tonight the topic, why don't these artists get more love? That's right, we're going to look at these artists that, well, they need a lot more love. So the panel's here, we're ready, so let's get started. Welcome to the Contrarians, and today we are doing a show earlier in the day. We've got a lot of people that work different shifts. We're trying to switch it up, get more people involved. And what a great panel we have tonight. We've got Bill, we've got Todd Owens, the Parish of Rock, and Phillips. I forget where you're located.
I'm in France. I'm in Europe.
France. So,
yep.
And the parish is in the UK. We've got a worldwide panel here tonight. So what we're going to talk about are those bands that you think should have been more successful, should have gotten their due, and they never did. Parish, explain to me what your concept was.
Yeah, so the topic is, why don't these artists get more love? And it could be new bands that perhaps don't get as much love as you think they should be or should do, or they could be older bands. Mm-hmm. So it could be bands that you love, but you don't think other people appreciate as much. Or they could be bands that seem to be very popular in that they sell a lot of records, but don't actually seem to get much mention or discussion, particularly on programs like The Contrarian. Or it could be unknown bands that only you really know about, but for some reason you think should be much better known than they actually are. So it could cover a whole host of things, really. But the principle to it was that I find quite often in watching The Contrarians, people mention bands that they're really passionate about, but nobody else seems to really either share the passion or even in some cases know who they are.
Right. Yeah. It's all about turning people onto these bands or artists that no one's ever heard of. You know, there are so many bands. I'm still trying to catch up. You know, Todd Owens he understands. He's still trying to catch up with these bands that he's heard of, but maybe he hasn't heard them. But that's
and I'm running out of time.
Yeah, we're running out of time, for God's sakes. Gotta catch up. So Parish, since this was your topic, let's start out with you. We're gonna go an hour. If we can get through it twice, we'll get through it twice. But really, I just want to have a general discussion, and let's just talk some music. And Rand Kelly there with the plug, of course. What would we do without Rand plugging his own CD, for goodness sakes?
There talk about needing more love.
Rand needs a lot of love. So anyway, we're just
people that are buying my CD are me.
Well, it's a tough market.
It is.
It is well, I mean, you're breaking in a little late, Rand, but that's okay.
I know, I'm a new artist.
You're a new artist. All right, so we're going to go Parish, Bill, Phillips, Todd, Rand, and we'll go around like that. Is that cool? And then if we go around twice, we will. If we can't, whatever, but we're just going to have a great discussion. And Parish, I do want to applaud you because I think this is a great topic. So, all right, Parish, start us off.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with a band that has been huge in the UK. The UK seems to have a load of bands that are really popular, but don't seem to translate elsewhere, particularly to the States. And for some reason, they tend to start with S. So I'm not going to talk about Slade. I'm not going to talk about Status Quo. I'm not going to talk about The Sweet, which are all big bands over here, but never seem to translate. I'm actually going to talk about a more current band. Don't know if that's coming up.
Oh, wow. Look at that's freaky. Okay, there you go.
The Stereophonics. So the Stereophonics are a band that formed in 1992. They've had 11 albums. The first was released in 1997. Over here, every album goes straight in at number one. They're absolutely huge over here. They headline festivals, they can sell out arena tours, they can sell out stadium tours, and yet you go outside of the UK, they're not known. Almost every single goes top 10. They've had a number one, but no, they're not known anywhere else. And to describe them, I went onto Wikipedia to see how they described them. They described them as a classic UK rock band delivered with whiskey vocals. So the vocalist is in the same kind of vein as, say, a Rod Stewart. So it's that kind of vocalist. the music, I suppose, has got a bit of an indie feel to it, but it's still very much guitar orientated rock. There's 4 members in the band. The lead vocalist is Kelly Jones. The bassist is Richard Jones. They're not related, but they formed the band originally. They've had a couple of guitarists and a couple of drummers, but most recent is Adam Zidane on guitar and James Morrison on drums. And the albums are fantastic. I mean, every album has got 4 or 5 really good tracks on them. I guess the best were probably the first 3. The debut, Word Gets Around. The second one, Performance and Cocktails. And then the big breakout album over here was called Just Enough Education to Perform, which included a cover of Rod Stewart's Handbags and Glad Rags song. But every album, as I say, goes in over here at number 1. If you like sort of guitar orientated commercial rock, you'll like the Stereophonics. I guess if I was to describe who are they similar to, and this might be partly because they're Welsh and so are these other bands, but they're not dissimilar to the Manic Street Preachers. They're not dissimilar to Feeder, those kind of bands. So they're I guess kind of late Brit pop, but the more guitar orientated. So if you think of bands like Suede, maybe that gives you kind of a feel for them. But absolutely huge over here. As I say, sell out stadiums, sell out festivals. Last album, Ucha, I think it's really good. That came out last year and was the 8th album on the road to go straight in the number 1 over here. But they don't translate anywhere else. I went on to Wikipedia to see how they do in the States, and the answer is nothing. But to be fair, they don't do anything anywhere else either. So they're not particularly selling in Australia. They're not selling in Europe. It just seems to be the UK, which is odd, because their style of music, I would have thought would translate pretty well.
So over in France, Philippe, nothing. You ever hear of that band?
Not particular. No, not particularly.
I've never heard of them.
Well, I mean, I'm originally from Greece, but I've been living in France for quite a while, and I've heard of them. Have I actually listened to them? No. And having lived in the UK myself for 8 years, to be honest, I was just at the time I was inundated by Oasis and the Arctic Monkeys. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Who of course don't need much more love than them.
No, I think they've got
exactly.
At least Arctic Monkeys in the States, people know of them, but the Stereophonics, I've never heard of them. Todd, you ever hear of them?
I've heard of them, but that's it. I've never heard them.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Rand, you've heard of them? Rand gives a thumbs up. Of course, he knows everybody. Well, that's great. Awesome. Stereophonics. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I've never heard of them. I don't know. I live under a rock, I guess.
If you're going to check them out, go for the greatest hits, because that definitely their best songs have been, in my view, the singles.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd go with the greatest hits, which was called A Decade in the Sun.
Well, how many albums do they have? How many albums do they have out?
11.
Oh my God! Wow.
And you could the first 3 are probably the best 3, but my personal favorite is this one, which is called Language, Sex, Violence, Other. Oh, it's having problems with me. You can't see it.
There you go. Oh. That album
that was the one that had the number 1 hit that was called Dakota. But yeah, they're just a guitar orientated rock band with commercial edge to it, really. But as I say, the vocalist is in that traditional sort of Rod Stewart type of style.
Excellent, cool.
I always thought they were a punk band, and I never got to hear them.
No, I think well, they're not a punk band, but as I say, there's definitely some indie influence in there. If you think of bands like the Smiths, maybe you can see that, because the guitar is a bit more jangly than it is heavy rock type guitar. They're definitely not a heavy rock band, but they are a rock band in the sort of more traditional sense.
I've never heard the Smiths. It's funny when people do those comparisons. They'll do 4 or 5 bands. I've never heard any of them.
No, the Smiths sound a bit like the Stereophonics.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, there you go. Something to check out. I love shows like this. All right. Thank you, Parish. All right, Bill Schuster, what you got?
All right. I had a bit of a misunderstanding of the topic also, but this might fit. My understanding of the topic was, what do say the members of the Contrarians not talk about enough, not give enough love to on the various shows, rather than the general overall world audience?
That still fits, though, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had kind of a theme with my picks. We'll see if we get beyond here, but all of them seem to fit. They've all been around for a little over 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
and they are all still around. That was the key. I wanted to make sure that these are bands that are still around, and all of my picks that I had ready are bands that had some success early in this century, but they've kind of continued to put out albums with less and less popularity, at least here in the States. I know one in particular probably is still pretty big in Parish's territory, but if I get to that, we'll see. The first one I would like to talk about, though, is the one that's right back here behind me. Pain of Salvation. Pain of Salvation, a short description, the lazy description would be progressive metal, which would seem to fit the Contrarians' general vibe, but they go way beyond that. Daniel Gildenlow is a super talented, super weird dude, and he's an amazing vocalist and lyricist. Very nice. Obviously.
Yeah. Evidently. Well, we have a fan. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of all over the map from the very first album. They started out. Entropia was it got some minor critical acclaim amongst certain crowds, but I don't think these guys have ever really sold any major anything anywhere other than amongst the niche modern prog and metal audiences. And even then, I don't think they're very well known in overall metal community, which is kind of surprising, because when they go that route, they're damn fun. But then they do things like B, which is really, I don't know how to describe B. It's not a metal album. It's not.
If I may say, it's really conceptual, very conceptual album, even more leaning towards the concept rather than the music.
I agree. I think really pretty much all of their albums to some degree would be conceptual, I think. Yeah, Daniel is a pretty deep lyricist, and he ties everything together. Musically, these guys haven't kept a solid lineup throughout their career. Daniel is the only one who's been there the entire time, but he's the key member. He is extremely important. Without him, and yet oddly enough, I believe it was it a Yes cruise maybe? Maybe not quite a decade ago. I think the band was scheduled to play on one of the Prog Rock cruises, and Daniel developed a serious illness. And so the band went ahead and played without Daniel, their frontman, lead singer, guitarist, songwriter, which is pretty impressive, actually, that they went ahead and carried through without the main guy in the band. So obviously the rest of them are pretty talented too, whoever's in the band at the time. But yeah, Daniel is the key.
And Bill, how long have they been around?
Their first album, I believe, came out, let me see, it was 96? Well, maybe this says 99, but I think this version is a re-release by Inside Out.
Mm.
They've been around for a good quarter of a century anyway, actually longer prior to their first album's release. Apparently he started the band way back when, back in high school, if I remember right. But yeah, it took a number of years before they actually made their first album.
Super.
Bill, I wanted to say that this band is on my list of things that I need to start listening to. I'm familiar with Daniel Gildenlow because of his work as being the fifth man in Transatlantic.
Oh yeah.
And I actually think that,
and the Flower Kings.
Yes. Oh. And I actually think that I prefer later versions of Transatlantic where Ted Leonard is the fifth guy, because Daniel Gildenlow is so charismatic that I think he takes too much focus away from Neil Morse. So, I mean, that's how good the guy is. So I'm way behind on that band.
That surprises me, Todd. I figured, I mean, yeah, considering some of the stuff you're into, I would have figured.
I'm way behind.
All right.
They plenty to learn, plenty to catch up on, like we said. So
So much glare. God dang it.
what you trying to show us, Rand? What is it?
Oh, never mind. I hit the wrong button. Hang on.
Oh, okay. That's all right.
I
All
was
right.
trying to show this. It's called Pain of Salvation Hereafter, 1996. It's a
Okay.
cassette.
Okay.
That was like a,
I think it's pretty rare. Well, here's Entropia, and it says 1997.
there we go.
Oh, there you go.
Their first album normally was going to be 1 Hour by the Concrete Lake, but for some reason, that one came out after Entropia while it was programmed to be, in fact, their first record. Bit of a mix-up. I'm not sure.
So
exactly what
were these guys ever
There's
signed?
14 songs on here.
Were these guys ever signed to a major label?
If you
They
consider
were-
Inside Out major.
Yeah,
I don't
if you
know.
consider, I mean, Inside Out is like, it's like this black hole that sucks in every single prog band that exists. And they've even signed Dream Theater and
Yeah.
so many of these contemporary sort of British bands like Pattern Seeking Animals, who have Ted Leonard in their lineup. And I have to say, apropos of this, because I'm a big fan, as you realized, that some of these bands are, like Parish said before, are really big in certain countries, like super big, and in the rest of the world, like very little. And in my homeland in Greece, Pain of Salvation were big already from the late 90s.
Mhm.
The press, before the internet, of course, the press had really promoted them a lot. They were giving them a lot of praise, and they were getting many shows in Greece, and that's where I had the chance to see them already on the tour for B, and every single tour, every single album after that, until Daniel, indeed, the band went on a sort of hiatus, and there's a lot of turbulence because Daniel contracted flesh-eating bacteria. It was that he almost died, of course. Yeah, terrible story.
Wow. All right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
not
a friend of
good.
mine, about 20 years ago or so, a friend of mine sent me this thing called Remedy Lane.
Yeah, that's a masterpiece.
It was a copy. Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of
That might still be my favorite.
yeah.
there you go. We have
Yeah,
some-
Roy Stolt really helped that band a lot. I mean, he carried Daniel Gildenlow around all over the world with the Flower Kings, and people would go, "Who's that guy?" And it is sort of just built up, you know.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And
A
they
little
don't
bit.
seem an odd match with the Flower Kings, though I like both. But yeah.
Yeah, their music is much heavier than the Flower Kings.
Mhm.
All right. Cool. Excellent, Bill. Moving right along. Philippe, what's your next one?
Yes, okay. So I have too many selections here, and I would be tempted to continue on the same sort of prog vein to also give some props to Todd for his t-shirt. Haken, who are really big in that niche of prog. They go on Cruise to the Edge and all that, but it is still a really small niche, and maybe they could get more love from the bigger metal community, especially as they incorporate many elements of modern metal like djent, 8-string guitars and all that. But anyway, I'm going to focus on my first selections. I'm going to go first with a guitar player who had a bit of a career with a few bands, but eventually went on solo. And he really influenced the way I play and how I sound, and that is this guy here, Roy Buchanan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is my anthology, double CD anthology. Of course, like most people, I think I might have heard his version of what's it called, Green Onions, that famous kind of shuffle.
Mhm.
And then I was just blown away by how this guy was an absolute master of the Telecaster. He's known for mastering the Telecaster and for having his own unique sound on it. The way his attack on the Telecaster was very like aggressive. Like he was playing very like melodic and soulful, bluesy, blues rock, blues folk a little bit. He dabbled a little bit in Neil Young as well. But the way he attacked the guitar, it was really aggressive for that kind of style and very trademark, very unique. He also had he was very much of a pioneer with the so-called pitch harmonics, and he did this thing with the volume knob a lot, which people have, like Brian May are known for it. Uli John Roth is amazing at using the volume knob to create that sort of spacey effect. This guy, he was able to create that wah effect without using a pedal, but with the volume knob.
And you can do it with a tone knob, Philip.
The tone or the volume, sorry.
Tone. Yeah, bass, treble,
Okay.
bass, treble.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how they did it in the old days.
Incredible. I mean, he makes it sound easy, and it's not. I know it, from my experience, at least it's not easy. Anyway, this guy never, I think, was properly acclaimed. On Wikipedia, if you go and you look and well, at least it was confirmed for me what I already knew, which is that he was referred to a lot as what the greatest guitar player you've never known, or something like that. And he had a solo career which was to some extent successful. He had 2 gold albums, but he had a problem with alcohol. Allegedly, he was asked to join the Rolling Stones, and he went down. He has this kind of legend of having rejected the Rolling Stones. And he had a problem with alcohol. He was apparently afraid that joining the Stones would possibly result in him doing drugs and drinking more. He was a bit scared of that. And he had a really tragic death at the age of 49, if I'm not wrong, committing suicide in jail after being arrested for being intoxicated in public. And he hanged himself.
Oh, my God.
Terrible. And anyway, this guy was a unique guitar player. I have to say that on this double anthology, there's a cover of Down by the River. This was the first ever time I heard a song that was originally, I think, by Neil Young. And he was my gateway to Neil Young at a time, of course, when we didn't really have the internet or streaming. So I had to, sort of try to find my way towards Neil Young via Roy Buchanan. Amazing guitar player. Also, like he played a lot of singer-songwriter stuff with his version of The Messiah Will Come Again, and The Story of Isaac. And he was a bit influential, if I'm not wrong, for Gary Moore as well. Okay, Roy Buchanan is my first choice. I'll leave it there. See if we can come back to a few more later.
Can I add something to that, Philip? On Jeff Beck, Blow by Blow, I can't ever say that title. Blow by Blow.
Yeah.
The song "Cause We've Ended as Lovers" by Stevie Wonder. I'm looking at the credits right now, and it says dedicated to Roy Buchanan.
Oh, right. Well, with that opening,
Jeff loved him.
with
Jeff
the
Beck
tone
loved
and
him.
Well,
the
he
volume
was-
knob. Yeah, maybe that's him. I don't know. That's just...
What now? I didn't hear you.
What I just said is that, I mean, Jeff Beck was absolutely unique. There was nobody else like him in the world. But maybe indeed that kind of at the beginning of the song where he plays a lot with the volume and maybe with the tone, maybe that's him saying, props to.
Yeah. Well,
Roy
Jeff,
Buchanan.
Jeff used the Telecaster quite a bit, but mostly the pictures and the videos that you see are the Fender Stratocaster. But I've seen him like a lot, and he does use the Tele on certain songs. People Get Ready, he uses the Tele. He uses the Tele on Going Down.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, but I remember when I was a kid, because when I used to get Guitar Player magazine, was mentioned quite a bit in there because I think he was more of a guitar player's guitar player. All the guitar players knew about Roy, maybe the mass public didn't, but he was always very well thought of,
Because he didn't get played on the radio. He didn't have any hits.
Right.
That's the thing.
But yeah, they always put him with the Telecaster because that's all he ever played. They always said he was the master of it.
Him and Danny Gatton, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, both of them kind of similar in a certain degree, Great stuff though. Yeah. Virtually probably unknown at this point.
Well, I've never heard of him, which is probably strange because he sounds like my era of music.
I mean, he passed away in 88, so
Yeah, that's the thing. He was just 49 years old,
Yeah.
Yes. Too young.
Too young. All right, excellent pick. Go ahead, Parish.
Yeah, what was his musical style?
Well, I mean, as I said before, he dabbled a little bit in singer-songwriter and folky stuff, but it was mostly blues with a lot of
blues guitar player.
Blues with
Mostly
a lot of
instrumental, right?
a Motown kind of feel to it a little bit as well.
Yeah.
70s, the generation of Johnny Winter, Alvin Lee, these sort of guitar players.
Yeah, later in his career, he was on Alligator, and that was a blues label. So he put like 3 albums out on Alligator. So yeah, he was basically a blues guitar player. I mean, he could play more than that, but yeah. Last record he put out was in 87. Oh well. But he did put out quite a few albums. First,
I I have that anthology on a cassette. Somebody made it for me, my friend Bill. It's good.
Yeah, that's the one on Polydor, right? Came out like 92 or something. There was another one. There's a John Mayall one that looks very similar to that. They must be putting out a lot of these comps that were very similar. But the John Mayall, there's two CDs, say this, Rand, try to say this. There were two CD set versions. So I don't know. Pretty cool. All right. Excellent choice. All right. Let's throw it over to Todd Evans and see if he was able to pull something together.
Okay. So I'm going to, for my first band I'm going to talk about, I'm glad I picked this one to go first, because this is a band that has been described as indie pop, dream pop, and jangle pop. And I'm talking about the Ocean Blue from Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And
they started in 1986, and they were signed to Sire in 1988 to a three album deal. At the behest of Sire founder Seymour Stein, he personally picked them out, and they were still in high school when they were signed. And so this band here is, they're led by a guy named David Schelzel. I think I'm saying that right. And he's the lead singer and guitarist. And they've got a bass player, a drummer, and a keyboard / saxophone player. In later years, they've had a couple of changes, but they each album is a little bit different in style, so they kind of evolved. And I want to say too, before I go any further, that this band is still active today, considering they were signed in 1986 when they were in high school. They're younger than me, so they I would describe it as basically indie rock. They've got kind of their drummer at this time, their first 3.5 albums, they had a drummer named Rob Minnick, and he was a very tight player, and his parts were very concise and recorded very crisply. So this album, this band has kind of a light feel to their music. This one is probably the most mainstream. When you go to their second album, Circling, it is a little bit more. I struggle to describe this, but there's more of a technical aspect to how the band is recorded, and there's a lot of either super a lot of effects on the guitar or none at all. Some of the guitar in this album is completely without effects, so it's got it, but it's it's very lean sounding, and there's a lot of space in it while being a little bit lush kind of as well. And their third album, Beneath the Rhythm Sound, is probably kind of a combination of the two kind of different sounds, kind of just a standard kind of indie pop sound with a little bit of the kind of super high tech, super clean style of the second album. They ran on some hard times. They got dropped by Sire. They made a fourth album, which is called C. And this particular album here, very similar to the Matthew Sweet style of album cover, by the way.
It is.
And but this particular album here is a little bit heavier. It's a little bit less of a emphasis on keyboards, and for that reason, some of the songs sound like this album. Some of the songs are harder edged, and so it almost feels kind of like two different albums. They sort of lost some of their consistency, I think, and they got caught up. There was some kind of reorganization in this came out in '96. There was some kind of reorganization at Mercury, and they signed a whole bunch of alternative rock acts, and then they dropped them all. That's why there's only one Morrissey album on Mercury, is because they just axed all of their modern rock. So I'm not really sure what happened there. I probably should have done research on that. But this band kind of falters. Their next album, they make about half of it. It's called Davy Jones' Locker, and then they finish it, and it starts with the main drummer. Their original drummer got replaced by a guy named Peter Anderson. And so a little bit of this album is recorded with him, and they put it out on their own, and it got picked up by an independent label called Kraft Records. And then I think Kraft Records went out of business. And so this particular copy here is on What Records. And this album sort of had a hard time. It's just recently got a vinyl release. And then they spent a lot of time trying to keep it going and not having a lot of luck at it. And they released an EP, I think in 2000, let me see. I think it's in 2003. Hang on a sec. 2004. And so anyway, they come back in 2013 with this album right here called Ultramarine, and their lineup changes. They lose the keyboardist saxophone player, and they get a guy named Ed Ronnie, who is a guitarist keyboardist, and so this particular album here is almost return to form. Other than the fact that the drummer is not quite as good as the first guy, but I don't want to be too hard on him, because it's very the original drummer Ron Minnick had a very unique style, and it would be hard to replicate. But this album is super strong. And then they came out in sorry, I should have these memorized. I believe this is 2019 with this album, Kings and Queens, Knaves and Thieves. And again, a lot like the one before it. Very, very good. Very, very much like the style of the first album, all these many years later. And, you know, I think indie pop bands kind of age well, and these guys in their 50s kind of look pretty good, as far as, you know, looking like you see them on stage and you think, oh, okay, well, it's a late 40s, early 50s version of the same guys in the Ocean Blue, and it still works. And they're still touring. They do. I think David Shelzel is a attorney, and so this is not his day job, but they managed to do probably 15 to 18 gigs a year. And they just played in North Carolina a couple of nights ago. They've been on the West Coast in the last couple of weeks. But the Ocean Blue was always sort of right on the cusp of making it. And there are even some bands from that era that I kind of have an attitude about, because I thought that Ocean Blue should have made it instead of them. I've always been that way about Toad the Wet Sprocket. When the timing of when they made it, I thought to myself, that should have been Ocean Blue. Ocean Blue's a better band. But anyway, I've always been a promoter of that band, and they're very good. And if you like prog rock, you'll still like them. If you like any kind of indie pop, they're easy to get into.
You know what, Todd, I think that's a good choice. It's funny you brought that up, because there was a buddy of mine who was really into the Ocean Blue in the 90s. Big time. And I was aware of them. I was always under the impression if you look at that first album cover or you listen to that record, I always thought they were a British band. He always kind of compared them to the Smiths, because he always really liked the Smiths. And he always kind of said they're not like the Smiths. I was totally aware of these guys. I've never listened to them.
You know, I've never said this about the Ocean Blue, but I've said it about another band of the same era that I really like, that I almost picked to do, and that's the Railway Children, is that it's kind of like listening to the Smiths without having to put up with Morrissey. Very similar
that's what I understand. It's kind of in that vein. Multiple
guitar parts in a row that fit on top of each other and counterpoint and stuff like that. Very similar to the Smiths. I agree.
So yeah, it's just different. But my God, I had no idea they were from Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I didn't even know they existed.
Like I said, I've heard of them. And if you go in the used bins, I don't know if any of you gentlemen go out searching in the bins. God knows I do. You will find a lot of times the first album will be like, and maybe some of their other records. The one that you held up, Todd.
This one.
I've not seen that one, but the one where she's holding the camera, it looks like a Smith.
Oh, yeah. See, yeah.
That if you put the Smiths up at the top, it would look like
absolutely
album cover.
Yeah.
That I've seen out there for $1. It's out there. So go out and check it out.
Definitely worth $1.
See, I'm glad you brought this band up, because now I'm going to make a point to make sure I pick up some of their stuff, because it sounds like it's right up my alley. But it's just one of those bands that you were aware of, but you never picked it up. There might not be a reason why. You just never did, you know? So awesome.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, on that same note, a couple of their albums, I want to say it is this one. If you go to their website, the ones that they have for sale are new old stock.
So really?
Not a print, and they just got some, and they'll sell you one if you want one.
Yeah, on their website.
Yeah.
See, and then look at that album cover too, Todd. I'm thinking I'm still at work. when I look at that album cover, to me that just looks like a British band.
It
They
does.
just they do. They just come off as a British
It kind of mimics the
like
Blue
a British
Note
band
kind of style, but
Yeah.
a lot of British bands did that. Yeah.
I love it. I think it's great. So there you go.
And they got a big box guitar, you know, like the old jazz guitar there.
Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
kind of like
Mhm.
Haircut 100. They be playing Gretches and stuff. What is
Yeah.
it?
It looks like a
Is that a Gretsch? Yeah.
It looks like a Tennessean.
Looks like Haircut 100, kind of. I'm
Mhm.
just saying, very British looking.
Beatles.
Yeah.
George Harrison.
Well, that too. Yeah.
I got a question. When they went to Kraft Records, did their sound get really cheesy?
Oh, CRAFT, but they're
Oh yeah, okay.
Well, I see they're on a record.
Sorry, it was low hanging fruit. I had to go for it.
it isn't a blue box though.
Yeah.
I never saw that album, and I mean, back in the '80s and stuff, I was always thumbing through records at the works, you know, and Mike Patton was always around me, and we were always talking, and I never ever heard of or saw that record. I mean, that band. It's funny, huh? They never got to Eureka. They never showed up.
The highest that the Ocean Blue got up in it got to 155 on the charts. It only sold 150,000 copies, and then the next record sold more. But I think after that, they kept going.
Well,
down
if you can't, in those days, if you couldn't get on MTV, nobody would have heard of you.
but I kind of remember that. Didn't they play the Ocean Blue? Maybe
I
I'm
don't
wrong.
think so. I have no memory of that band.
They did.
whatsoever.
There's something even on the Wikipedia page. They were on one of the first episodes of Club MTV with Downtown Julie Brown,
Oh, really?
Oh, well,
and
there
she
you go.
played.
Yeah, I never
she
watched
played
that
Between
show. I was
Something and
always
Nothing,
doing-
which is from that first album.
I would only watch Headbangers Ball.
Well, that was a weird place for them to land because they should have been on 120 minutes, but for whatever reason, that's what happened.
It's a
Do
good.
they sound anything
good-
like Jellyfish?
Not too much unlike Jellyfish, but not as innovative as Jellyfish.
Oh yeah, Jellyfish is.
A little more janglier.
But Dream Pop, do they even come close to oh gosh, Dream Pop? What would be a good example of Dream
Well,
Pop?
there are definitely elements of shoegaze, especially in the second
Shoegaze.
record. Yeah, there are
Yeah.
definitely elements of that because some of, like I said, on this album, the guitars are either super distorted or no effects at all.
Mhm.
So there's definitely some shoegaze going on there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Well, I
pick that
respect
up.
time.
guitar players who don't use effects and can make it sound good because it's really hard. We're so conditioned to hear all these effects pedals that came out during my lifetime. I mean, you look back at the Beatles when they were on Ed Sullivan, they
Yeah.
had just an amplifier, a Vox amplifier.
Right.
Whenever I
they-
hear that,
good.
I think of people that I knew, like when I was a kid, like that were teenagers that were in bands that didn't have a lot of gear. And so
Yeah,
whenever I hear
garage
it, it's
rock,
instantly
right?
familiar to me because I think, oh, those are like my buddies across the street. That's what it sounded
Right.
like.
Right.
Yeah, very pure. All right, cool, Todd. That's a great choice. Let's throw it over to Mr. Kelly and
Oh,
see what he's
hey.
gonna lay
Okay,
on.
well,
today.
I'm gonna start out with a band that a lot of people know, but they never get any airplay and they never get any love, and yet they've outlasted all the bands that copied them. And I'm talking about the Seattle Sound. This is the band that created the Seattle Sound. Can you read that?
Three Sides of One, King's
Oh, yeah,
X.
Yeah, this band is incredible because, like I said, the only time I ever heard them on TV, other than the fact that they did a couple of videos on MTV at the time, '89 and maybe back in those days, '90. Paul Schaefer's orchestra in the David Letterman show would play "We Were Born to Be Loved" on the commercial jump, and I'd be going, "What?" It's like, you got to be kidding me. But yeah, I mean, this band, King's X, Doug Pinnick on bass and vocals, Ty Tabor on guitar and vocals, Jerry Gaskell on drums and vocals. I've seen them 4 times, met them twice. They're the nicest guys you'd ever meet. And I actually asked the question at the table when I was talking to them in 2004. I said, "How come you guys aren't more popular?" And Ty Tabor goes, "Well, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it?" And I'm going, "Oh God, I shouldn't have said that." I always regret some of the things I say when I meet famous people, but they're so good and they're loved. Eddie Trunk once said on an interview, he said, "Musicians love them. The public doesn't know about them." And he goes, and I can't figure out why.
Well, if you look
Because-
at the charts, I'm just saying they barely ever chart. Well, they did chart here though.
I know.
But
and
they
they're
did
so good.
better in the UK.
This
Chart wise.
band, when they play their song from the first album, Out of the Silent Planet, called Goldilocks, they nowadays, well, for the last 20 years or so, they turn the microphones around towards the audience, and the audience sings the entire song, and all they do is play. It's like a karaoke bar where the whole audience is singing the song, and they just love it. It brings them to tears. They absolutely just, it's an amazing thing to see. And like I say, they just can't. I don't know what it is, but they never get played on, like Music Choice on cable or Sirius XM or something. They never get played. I mean, I listen to that stuff a lot, and we have Sirius XM in the house, and they never ever get played on classic rock stations or metal stations, or they're just too. They said when they first started, their goal was to be the heavy metal Beatles. And when you listen to them, their harmonies are absolutely stunning. And they are doing what they wanted to do. They're a power trio, yeah. Right? And they've been the same band lineup since 1988. They've got 16 studio albums, a live album, and a DVD. And I think they're getting ready to put out another DVD, like a history of the band. I think that's in the works. But yeah, I just love them. I can't get enough. And as far as I'm concerned, they don't have a clunker song. Everything they've ever done is just absolutely fantastic. Love King's X. Big fan.
Yeah, you were mentioning that Beatles tie-in. If you listen to Faith, Hope, Love, that album is so Beatlesque.
Oh, it's love.
It's love, and we're finding who we are.
Yeah. Well, Tate Davis, the guitar player, sings "It's Love," and he has this knack for sounding like John Lennon.
Yeah.
And it's really good.
I remember when It's Love was played on the alternative stations back in the day.
Oh, That's when
I first heard it. They were playing on alternative stations.
Oh, well, there's a very rare VHS tape that for some reason, they just never made it into a DVD. I don't know why. It's called King's X Chronicles, and it's like 6 songs, and they're all videos that they had made for MTV, and MTV only played 2 of them, Over My Head and It's Love. And the rest were never played. We Were Born to Be Loved and King is Coming, or it's just called King, but it's from the first album. But God, yeah, this band is just, I just can't say enough good about them. Dream Theater invited Doug Pinnick to sing on a song called Lines in the Sand on Falling into Infinity. And when you listen to that song, you can hear him wailing away in the background. And that guy, when I first heard him, I thought that he sounds like Pete Rivera from Rare Earth, because they have the same kind of tone. Really, seriously, very, very similar. But yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, King's X should have been, well, all the bands that loved him made it. Metallica loved him, Alice in Chains loved him, Pearl Jam loved him, Soundgarden loved him. They were all friends and everything. But like they were those bands were out of Seattle, and King's X came out of Katy, Texas. And I think that sound was created by King's X. They dropped the D on the guitar, made everything sound, heavy.
But I don't think. Yeah, I see what you're saying, Ray, but there's no one that sounds
played that 12-string bass like Tom Peterson in Cheap Trick.
Yeah, that's true.
And that makes a difference, especially when you see him live. That bass is, oh my God, it just sounds like a heavy metal piano. It's amazing.
But I want to say, Ray, no one sounds like King's X.
Oh, you're right.
Instantly identifiable.
Absolutely.
Instantly.
Well, there was one band that kind of sounds like them. They're a Christian group called PFR, Pray for Rain. I really like those guys a lot. They sound kind of like King's X.
Yeah, but King's X,
especially on an album called Them. Oh my God, that album is incredible.
But I'll tell you, Faith, Hope, and Love, that's my favorite one. Side 1, I guess it was a side. It came out on CD. I don't know if it ever came out on vinyl ever again.
Oh yeah,
90. I guess it did come out on vinyl.
I had all those on vinyl, and I got rid of them because I bought the CDs.
That side 1 on there is so Beatlesque. It's just amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
Todd's on mute.
My impression of that band is skewed because I had so many friends who were guitarists, and I always think of King's X as being a really big band because everybody that I know likes them a lot. So it's like I always
Like,
think of them as being more
musicians love them,
successful
but the
than they
public
were.
doesn't know about them.
Yeah, they're like a musician's band.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They're
they're
quite-
very well
quite-
respected.
Yeah, they're quite big over here.
Are they? Well, yeah, they did their DVD. It's called Live in London.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
they're-
thought, like I
they're-
said, Parish, I looked at the charts and they actually, Gretchen got up to 52 in the UK. Faith, Hope, Love got to 70. Those records here didn't perform as well as that over here.
I have a really rare DVD called Gretchen Goes to London, and it's live concert. Oh, it just smokes.
Wow.
Very rare.
they'll
It's hard to
play-
get.
They'll play large theatres over here, and they're pretty high up on the bill on the festivals. So they're pretty big over here. I mean, I've seen them a couple of times live. They're really good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but they don't headline. They're always opening.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd say they're probably mid-bill on the festivals,
Yeah.
which is where I've seen them. I've seen them on the festivals, but if they come over and tour, they'll do sort of the theatres, sort of 3,000 seater type theatres, and will do quite well.
Yeah, yeah. The, people like Kirk Hammett of Metallica used to write in the like the magazines, like, this band is going to be so big they won't be able to find stadiums big enough to hold their crowd. And you know what? You want to see them really in action? Check out the Woodstock '94 video on YouTube, where they just absolutely stole the show on Friday night. It was, you know, MTV played one song, and it was a Jimi Hendrix cover called Manic Depression, and that's what they ended the concert with. But they did an entire set. It was over an hour long, and they were just amazing. And that crowd was like 600,000 people.
Wow. That's amazing.
And they just had that whole crowd wrapped up in their hands. They wrapped around their finger.
Yeah, I think I've seen clips of that.
It's amazing. That
Yeah.
stage was so big. That stage had to be 200 feet wide.
Yeah.
And there's just three guys out there. Just, I mean, you know, it's just unbelievable.
You thought that would have just made the band, but with that kind of exposure.
Yeah, but people have a short attention span, and other groups like Red Hot Chili Peppers and
Mhm.
you know, all these other bands like Faith No More got way huge, and King's X just never got. I just don't think they're the Rodney Dangerfield of rock.
Yeah.
Get
Well,
me-
We could probably go another 10 minutes would probably make an hour. Can we go around and do like honorable mentions real quick? Is
Sure.
that cool? All
I
right.
wish I would have done my last one first, because I had more to say about it. But
Well,
it's
well,
it's your time frame.
well, we like to keep it to an hour because
Yeah.
short attention spans, Rand. Short attention span. All right,
There you
Parish. What was your honorable mention?
The other, can you say that? The Struts.
Oh, the Struts.
I think they're a British band, but I think they're actually bigger in the States than they are over here.
Yeah.
They've been going since 2012. 4 albums. To me, they're sort of, I suppose, the only really classic rock band that's come out in the last decade, in my view. The lead singer is very Freddie Mercury influenced. He's got a fantastic voice, very charismatic on stage, great sense of humor. They've got a real sort of guitar hero for the guitarist on stage, looks the part, and the songs are fantastic. I mean, absolutely fantastic. But they don't do very well over here. They're played a lot on rock radio, but they don't seem to. The albums don't particularly sell. The tours, I'm lucky enough that they're still playing fairly small clubs, so I get to see them at small clubs. Whereas I think in the States they may be opening, but they have opened for the likes of the Who and the Stones and people like that. So I think they've had a lot more exposure over there. But yeah, I just think they're great. And I guess for your point of view, Grant, if you can imagine the Darkness with a more traditional, straightforward singer, that's kind of the Struts.
I would probably dig that. Because the one I would recommend is The Darkness, because I love The Darkness. Other than that first album that kind of had some success, The Darkness, no one pays attention to The Darkness over here. They're a lot bigger in the UK, you know?
Yeah.
But I love
The Struts. I think the Struts are kind of a glam rock band of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
but more sort of like Queen, early Queen, really, like the first 4 or 5 albums of Queen. But yeah, there's definitely a darkness similarity there, but with a much more traditional vocalist.
Yeah, I've seen like them mentioned in the media and stuff. I can't say that I've heard any. Well, actually, I have. They did play it on a classic rock station, like when it came out, maybe for a week, and then it disappeared. So they have gotten some.
Yeah.
Play, they played them around here.
And if you were going to listen to an album, I'd go with the second one, Young and Dangerous, which I think is the best of the albums.
Super. Excellent. The Parish, always bringing it. Bill Schuster, what's your honorable mention?
All right, we'll make it quick here. My next one was going to be one of the original Beauty and the Beast bands, Lacuna Coil. They've been around since the 90s, and they are still going strong, still releasing material, performing live. Christina and Andrea still sound great. Back in the old days, people would always say that, oh, Christina should be the sole singer for this band, but that kind of defeats the purpose of Lacuna Coil. They've made it clear that the growly male vocals and the smooth, silky, pretty female vocals combined are what makes Lacuna Coil, and I absolutely agree. Andre is a very underrated part of this group. Christina gets all the spotlight, but he deserves much as well. So yeah, if y'all remember them from 15 years ago when they were remotely popular, they're still going strong, folks.
When you mentioned that, it reminds me of the Sugar Cubes, because you had Bjork singing one part, and then you always had that other male.
He was awesome,
doing all the weird vocalizations.
I didn't know what to think of that the first time I got a Sugar Cubes album.
Yeah.
I wasn't even on drugs.
That first Sugar Cubes album is killer. I love it. But anyway, that's just what I was thinking. All right, Bill, that's cool. Excellent. All right. Philippe, what you got?
Yeah, thank you. Right, very quickly. You know what? I'm going to go with something different, totally different from my previous selection. I'm going to go with this band here from the US, Fate's Warning. I'm sure some of you are familiar with them. These guys appeared on the stage around early to mid 80s, more or less at the same time that Queensryche were kind of like starting this thing that's called progressive metal. Okay, kind of Rush basically started progressive metal, you could say as well. But, these guys appeared at the same time as Queensryche. They played this thing of like Rush meets Marillion, very dark, more heavy metal. After their first albums, they became much more lyrical, much more emotional, closer to that side of like Marillion, especially with this album, Parallels. And later on, they became, they played very technical, very lyrical, progressive, not like Dream Theater, this thing of, they accused them for playing 1 million notes per second and 2 long songs. These guys were more grounded, more emotional, more like they had catchy choruses, but very technical music, very demanding, adventurous music as well, but they never really broke out. Again, they were very popular in my country, in Greece, huge fan base, very fanatic fan base, but they always played the clubs. They never really ventured outside of that. Their leader, Jim Mateos, an amazing guitar player, somewhat of the school of Robert Fripp, but not exactly. He was not like a John Petrucci virtuoso type. He was also he's a type who I think was very timid in a way. He's not much of an extrovert, and I think that he doesn't care so much about touring. He has very many side projects. And so, yeah, they always played the club circuit. They never became really huge, although they did have fan bases around the world. And recently, they didn't exactly break up. They just dissolved in a way. Like their singer, Ray Alder, basically said, yeah, Fate's Warning is no longer really, and I'm doing my solo thing, and Jim is doing his solo thing, and we are not really going on anymore. And it really feels like this amazing band that really kept churning in one great album after the next, maybe a few bumps here and there, but generally really solid stuff from the beginning to the end. They just kind of disappeared. And no one really talked about the fact that these guys don't really exist anymore, that they're not releasing any more albums. They're kind of just forgotten. and it's indicative of how they really deserve so much more, at least as much as a band like Dream Theater, who kind of became, the kings of progressive metal.
Cool. Excellent. Rand's doing something.
Oh, Perfect Symmetry, my favorite, 1989, amazing record.
I've never even seen that album cover.
Oh, so good.
Is it? All right. Hey, I believe it. You guys know what you're talking about.
I saw them on MTV in 1989 from Perfect Symmetry. They played their video like one time and it was gone.
Oh, well. All right, cool. Let's move on. Todd, you got one for us?
Well, in keeping with the theme of me being late to the party all the time, I got into Fates Warning when their last album came out. That's when I discovered them, even though I knew who they were, and they've always been around. That last album is what I heard first, as far as all the way through. But anyway, I'm going to go really quick. I had told Grant before we started that I thought this show was later in the week, and so this is a complete coincidence that I'm wearing this Haken shirt. But I'm going to talk about Haken really quickly. So Haken, first three albums, prog metal, but definitely in a not conventional, because I don't think there's anything conventional about Haken, but definitely not necessarily groundbreaking. But I think that they should be more popular than they even are, because I think that not only is the musicianship incredible, but I think Ross Jennings' voice, I think because of his voice, that they should be more popular than they are, and the melodic quality of their songs and what Ross brings to them. But this is where things got really interesting for me, was their fourth album, Affinity. And it's like technically their fifth, because their first album didn't come out on a major label. But I know people that are Haken fans that only like these first three. But the thing that Haken did on this album, which I thought was really amazing, was that they Porcupine Tree came around a decade or two earlier, and Porcupine Tree for me was groundbreaking because they were such a heavy band, or could be such a heavy band. But then there'd be like the heavy part of the song, and then there'd be like the really pretty part of the song. Well, what Haken does is they take the pretty part and the heavy part, and they play them at the same time. So that blew me away. And when I heard them do that, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to start listening to more heavy music than I used to, because who knows what else other surprises are out there. But I think that Haken is amazing. They've got these two records here, Vector and Virus, and then the most recent one, Fauna. Really, all of them really innovative keyboard sounds. They kind of at times play two time signatures at once, where the rhythm section will be playing one time signature, and Ross will be singing in a different one. There's a song on this album called Puzzle Box that I'm pretty sure towards the end of it, they're playing in 3 time signatures at once. So if you like trying to figure stuff out, Haken is great. So even though Haken is pretty popular, I think they should be more popular.
That seems right up Rand's alley.
Oh, I got
fans that play 3 time signatures.
I got to see them live in San Francisco just before COVID, and
they're so great.
2 bands opened for them, Bent Knee and Leprous, and those 2
I went to that tour.
Nobody wanted to play guitar solo, and Haken came out, and it was just guitar solo galore, and I was like so happy. I would go, finally somebody knows how to play the guitar. Those guys were amazing. And that song on Affinity 1985, oh yeah, God, what a prog tune that is.
Yeah, and super accessible too. Melodically really accessible.
I love them. I wish I could have afforded more. But the only thing I like about Aquarius is the growling. I'm just not a growling fan.
Yeah, and they do less and less of it, to the point where there's hardly any.
The mountain is unbelievable. I mean,
yeah.
God, Cockroach King. Hello, Gentle Giant. We love you.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Haken. All right, Rand, what's your honorable mention? And we'll wrap this dog up.
Okay, here we go.
Yes, for God's sake. You knew he's going to bring out.
This guy. Well, I have a reason for picking this, because this is the box set. But listen, I just saw this band live down in Napa, California, October 27th. And it was just like, they don't get enough love, because ever since John Anderson has left the band since 2008, for, I don't want to get into the reasons, but a lot of fans, probably thousands of fans, have just given this band the thumbs down because of a new singer. And the fact that Rick Wakeman is no longer in the band, Jeff Downs is back in from the drama era in 1980. But this band has had the same singer longer than John Anderson was in the band in a consecutive time. He's been in the band 11 years. And he's great. I love John Davison. But this album is a masterpiece. This is so good. It's just as good as, well, I wouldn't say it's as good as Close to the Edge, of course, or Fragile, or Tales from Topographic Oceans, or Relaire. But for modern Yes to be still going at this time, you've lost Chris Squire and you've lost Alan White, and this band just keeps on trucking, and I love them. I think current Yes needs more love. Is why I did it.
Well, I can see that.
They're touring the classic Tales of Yes, and what they did was they're doing a medley of Tales from Topographic Oceans in 20 minutes, which is amazing because I never got to see the Remembering when I saw them in '74 when they were touring the album. By the time they got to Sacramento, they dropped the song, and I wanted to see it because I wanted to see Chris Squire play fretless. And Yes did my favorite part of the Remembering, where it goes relayer, da 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 da. That part, it rocks out. It was just fantastic, and they were outside, and it was cold, and it was just nuts.
There you go. Well, I didn't know Yes was going to pop up in this episode, but I totally can see. Yeah, modern day Yes
needs more love because ever since John Anderson has been out of the band, and Rick Wakeman. I would say half the fan base has just given up on them.
Well, do you think it was that, or was the fact that Chris Squire passed away? I think that had a lot to do with that.
That had a big effect. I mean, to me, he was the biggest, not the biggest, but my favorite bass player of all time. And when he passed away, but he begged Billy Sherwood to carry the band on his deathbed. So Billy said, "Yeah, of course I'll do it." And they've got a great drummer now in Jay Shellen, who Billy's known for years and years and years. So,
yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, when you have a rhythm section that knows each other, that makes a difference. It's not just a side guy coming in to take over. I mean, this new album, Mirror to the Sky, is really what you'd call a return to form, a comeback album.
Yeah. All right, cool. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Bands that should have gotten much more attention. Well, this gives you, hey, go down and check these bands out. See what you think. And if you do know these bands, put it down in the comments. Do you like these bands? What do you like about them? We want to hear from you, for crying out loud. But yeah, I know I can come away with some bands I'm going to have to see. These shows always cause me to spend money. So it gives me something to search for because these guys know what they're talking about. So anyway, I want to thank the panel. I appreciate everyone for coming on. This was fun. It's always fun to talk music with you folks. And I will say, if you like this, we do have a Patreon. You could become a member. You could be on these panels too, for goodness sakes. We do have a Ko-fi. Buy us a pint, buy us a cup of coffee. We like that. We also like donos. Those are good. We love money over here because we just do this because we're music addicts and we just can't get enough music. So that's why we're here. The Contrarians are here for you. So, all right, gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming on. And until the next time, I'm just going to say, keep it clean. How's that?
All right.
All right, gentlemen, we'll see you.
No promises.